Tazuo.
Howdy.
Welcome to the Catalyst channel. Tazuo, right? Or
Tazuo.
Tazuo.
Oh,
I'm gonna get better at that. Tazuo. Thank you. Thank you.
oh. Tazuo.
Tazuo. Hey, does that have any special meaning?
Yes, it is. I'm full-blooded Japanese, and
Okay.
so I was named after my grandmother, and in Japanese, female is Tazue, so I'm Tazuo, and it means the crane that watches over the rice field.
Wow. Do you feel like that?
Yeah, because in Japan, the crane is like the bald eagle here, right? It has the white crest, so it's closest to heaven, right?
Okay.
Purity. And then rice, right, is substance, right? So I'm the watcher over God's kingdom.
Aw. And you feel that way?
Oh yes, very very honorable to be, in that much abundance.
Wow. That's amazing. I love that. So basically Tazua
Ah ooh oh ah ooh oh
Tuzu
Tazuo
Tuz ta say it again.
Tazuo.
Tazuo. Tazuo.
Yeah, yeah, you said great.
Tazuo. Okay, so
Yeah,
we just met for the first
yeah,
time live, right? And
yes,
it was we were brought together by Joseph Rodriguez, and
yes,
he was like, "I want to see you two together because that would be fire to me," right? And we said, "Okay," and here we are.
yeah.
And we decided to not even have a particular agenda, just flow with it and see what comes up. And so I'm excited about this. I tell me. So we know your name, Tazuo, right?
Kazuo. Oh,
Tazuo, Tazuo. Okay, Tazuo. All right.
it's those vowels next to each other.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
think I'm used to that, Tazuo.
yeah.
Okay, Tazuo, I'm gonna get this. I'm totally gonna get this. No disrespect. And I love the meaning of your name and all the things that have come out so far. So tell me more about yourself. And also, it's hard not to notice that we kind of match, and that was not even planned.
It was heavenly planned.
But- Okay.
So a little bit about myself is, I live in Northern California, beautiful Northern California. I'm out in my garden with the lemon tree right behind me. And I'm just everything creative and just happy to be alive. And at the root of everything I do is poetry. I'm a award-winning poet, and I'm a painter, and I'm a storyteller, and I'm a creator of what's known as the Epic StoryVerse experience of Matsu. And I grew up in the Bay Area. I'm full-blooded Japanese. I was born in Tokyo, but I was raised in Northern California. And yeah, I make a full-time living off being an entrepreneur and a visionary and everything poetry, and spend most of my time doing every medium of art. I'm into theater. I'm a musician. Uh, I love speaking poems, and I love teaching art. What I've become to know more facilitating, and more of like a cultural bear and a culture producer. Like yesterday, I spent my day up in Redding, California, which is about an hour north of me, and I worked with incarcerated teenagers, teaching them poetry and getting them to express themselves with the divine word and rebuild themselves and remake themselves.
So take me through that. Yeah, yesterday. Take me through that. Or as though you were walking in right now and say, because in some ways we all are kind of incarcerated teenagers, aren't we?
Oh yes,
right?
High school is incarceration.
Right. So,
Right.
so we either did it to ourselves or we allow others to put, say, bars around us, or we just have this feeling of being incarcerated even though we're free. Um, so hypothetically, let's say you met me and you were there to facilitate that for me. How would that look? Like how would you approach
Well,
that?
the first thing I do is uh, I think a lot of it is more like I said, facilitating. So more communicating than teaching or telling you need to do something. You know, because I come from the base philosophy a lot in my what I was referred to in the Epic StoryVerse experience of Matsu. It's a grand story. I used to work at Lucasfilm, you know, the makers of Star Wars, and so it's an epic story. It is the next, to me, it is the next epic tale in our lives, like Lord of the Rings and Star Wars and Star Trek and all the way back to Winnie the Pooh and all that. And so I go into these facilities, and of course I have to do all the background check and everything and all like that. And you know, basically I go in there and I open it up with first introducing myself and telling my story. And my story, that's why I live such a enlightened life, I would say, in a flow-based life now, because my story started out very, very tragically. And the first kind of occurrence is, you know, I'm full-blooded Japanese, so my parents were in the Japanese internment camps as young children, and so I was raised with removing my culture. Like they removed, you know, I originally wasn't Tazuo. You know, they gave me another name to cover that up, and then they never taught me about any Japanese heritage or what my uh, grandparents did or parents did. They were very scared to call me Japanese, so I kind of grew up like that. And then at 10 years old, I lost my father to stomach cancer, and he was a very powerful martial artist. And basically, one part of the story is, to me, he worked for the system and didn't honor who he exactly is as a person. So he got stomach cancer. He wasn't a drinker, wasn't a, you know, unhealthy eater, smoker. So he got stomach cancer and he passed away when I was 10. And so that kind of left me with my mother. And my mother had to go to work. And so at 10 years old, I grew up really quick, but I was very, very disruptive and you know, very rebellious and very outcast. And then, so she was trying to keep putting me in all these programs, you know, to kind of like feed me, you know, because I had no father, no guidance. And she put me in the Cub Scouts, and I rebelled against that. I was starting to get in trouble in school. But then one day they showed the theater badge, and I was like, "What is that?" And they brought me in the theater, and something happened where I was like, "I belong in here. I could be loud, and I could be obnoxious, and I could be all the things that I really want to be right now, even shy and quiet and reserved, you know, and serious." And so I got a first role, but it was really strange because I got a role as a strong man. And so that brought me and my mother a little closer again because she helped me do the costume. But one day I'm looking in the mirror and I'm holding up my left arm all strong. And she's like tapping right here. And she's like, "Whoa, what is that?" And I'm like, "That's a muscle." And I just flexed it, and it was a tumor, like the size of, like, you know, I always say it's like Jupiter in the throat of my arm. That's why I love poetry so much, right? And she's
Ah,
like, "No, that is not your muscle." I'm like, I'm 11-year-old kid. That's my muscle. And
right,
she
right.
rushed me to the Stanford Children's Hospital in Palo Alto, California, in the Bay Area. And the doctor first off stared right at me, 11-year-old kid, and said, "We need to amputate your arm. And if it's something poisonous in that tumor, in that growth, your son," she told right in front of me, my mother, that basically I wouldn't live probably maybe 3, 4 years more, and that was it. And so going back to like what you were asking, right? I tell this story to the
Yes.
kids.
Yes.
And then of course what happened after I got, you know, I obviously have my arm.
Yeah, I need to know
They
that. I need to know
yeah,
that.
they operated and they removed it. And they first were supposed to break the bone because they had to scrape it so much to get it all off, right? And they never diagnosed what it was. Like they said, it might have been poison. I don't know what. Still to this day, don't know what it was. But what happened after me is that I went back to school. My mom had to go back to work because my father was gone, and so she was supporting the household.
Right.
And I basically went to the streets. You know, I grew up in the streets. I mean, that's why I would say rock and roll and hip hop and all the, you know, popular mainstream art saved me. You know, even graffiti and drawing and painting and you know, so I caused a lot of problems when I went back to school because I didn't fit in. I had this amazing story about what I just went through, but 12-year-old kids looked at me like whatever. So I was like very outcast, and I went into a lot of the mainstream things, like you know, didn't have a mother at home cooking or anything, so got into a lot of junk food and substance abuse, and then hustling on the streets, and um, so going back to the story of you know what you asked, so that's what I tell them, and I tell them somewhat like I'm telling you, but I tell it a lot in poems. I'm what's called a performance poet. So like, you know, I combine theater with poetry. So I just don't read it all like bland, you know, I give it to them. And then that seems to get across to a lot of them like in the street cred. You know, I'm not this normal teacher then after that, because I speak to them, you know, that I am one of them, you know, but I've, you know, like you know, the Bible saying that Joseph always used, you know, I don't conform to the you know,
Pattern.
the patterns of this world, right? You know, I transformed myself with the renewing of my mind, and a big part of that is the word, you know, because in the beginning there was the word was God, and God is the word, right? And so that's where poetry, and then just kind of tie that in without going too deep into it, but that's where Tazuo comes in, my grandmother, who I'm named after. Eventually, after you know, growing up and then going home and challenging my mom a little bit about like who am I, and finding my Japanese. Tazuo was a poet, a chanter of the Royal Court of Japan. So she chanted poems, and we'll get deeper into like where that ties in. But basically, I tell the kids these poems, and then I kind of get a different level than the teachers that's in there. I let the teacher do the discipline, you know, and that's why I said I become more of a facilitator, more of a cultural bearer, not a person that I'm going to teach you how this, because I don't believe you can teach anyone poetry, but you could bring it out of them. I believe, you know, because all of us have to use language, you know, to get love, to get fed, you know, to bring in our abundance and our harmony in our life. We have to use the word, you know. The beginning was the word, and the definitive word, and the divine word. And so, um, and poetry is a great way to teach these kids a lot why we came together, prosperity and abundance, because these kids to me are the geniuses. You know, they're the outcasts, they're the misfits, you know, they're the one that grew up with the scars of their parents, you know, but the scars to me are, you know, pain into power. That's part of Matsu's mission, to inspire people, is to rejuvenate creative resilience, you know, your pain into your power. Like I'm really into puppetry too, right? And so that's the great Jim Henson, right? Jim Henson and the Muppets, and to me he showed, you know, pain into power. Like every single one of his characters and puppets, what makes them so funny and so original is their addiction, or their, right, their
Yeah.
pain, or their
Right.
trauma, or something they went through, right? And they use it as a power, like Cookie Monster, right? Like, right, you know.
Yeah.
So or Big Bird, right? Like, you know, and like he's too tall, too big, but that's, you know, his power, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so then I tell the kids that, and then you know, I'm in the system, right? So I have to I bring kind of a curriculum. I bring what are called prompts, like, you know, think poem starters. right? But I really encourage them to write, instead of me like telling them what to write. And I really have come to love the incarcerated youth. I work with normal kids too, like in normal K through 12, because I also teach painting and drawing. But I love the core is definitely the word poetry, But I love the incarcerated kids. So in this unit I go to in Reading, there's 3 levels. They're called pods, right? And the highest level is the intense kids, the ones that probably did something really disruptive, right? And then the second level, is the in between, and it's co-ed. And then the third level is more minor, right? And the highest levels are actually my total joy and delight to work with, because they are the ones that I believe can change the world, just like in Star Wars. They are the Darth Vaders that could, balance the force. They are. And so a lot of times lately, what's been happening is the night before I go there, I'll wake up at sometimes at 2, 3 in the morning, and I believe I'm talking to God. I just start talking to God, like, what am I going to do today? And then lately I've been channeling these poems that are like, like I did one a few weeks ago, and I went in there and it was just all about like, let's cut the bull. I don't need to teach you to write. You have a story that, and then like yesterday I came in with a poem that was all about, they handed you sentences, but that's not the only sentences around here. You have sentences in your divine mind to speak. And then they all like hip hop, right? And I love to rap and speak in rhythm, right? And so I give them the metaphor of like, they put you behind bars, but you rhyme over bars. You can bend those bars, and you can give your own sentence. So that's basically what I do with them. And what happens, the highest level, they're the hardest to get through, right? Because their trauma is at a high level, and you know. But the middle group has been some miraculous things. Like there's been a couple of young ladies that have really found what, the high of what I call performance poetry, like really expressing their story. And times have changed because I've been working in the school system for a long time doing the arts. And this current situation, all the teachers and the principals and everything are way more open to even vulgar language, as long as it's not offending someone. And so these kids are, and me, I'm allowed to tell these stories that, I love mixing comedy with my traumatic stories to kind of show how I transform it. And so like I've got to do a lot of my favorite pieces that even maybe 8 years, 10 years ago were not allowed for me to speak them. And so that's basically what I do. And so I believe I facilitate and I cultural bear, like I open up the space because they already know. And I've been given the grand opportunity to just really tell them, like one of my characters in the Epic StoryVerse experience of Matsu is Ra, and I play him. And I could go get him if you want me to. He's a puppet, but his number one thing he says is, be funkified and free. Be exactly who you be, And so he always explains it. He's like, funky is being that funky self of yourself. Get your funk unstuck, be funky, be unique and extraordinary, and be free. And free means you don't care what other people think. And funkified, you got really into who you are. So.
Well, of course I would want you to go get it and
Oh, okay.
go get him. And then maybe the poem that you did yesterday. Do you have that?
Yeah, I have that.
I'll hang out, okay?
Okay.
I don't have a way to pause it, so we're just gonna have a intermission, maybe I'll just talk
No,
while
I got my tablet right here.
you got
So
your tablet. All right, perfect. So as you were talking about the different levels of incarceration or pods and those who are within each one, so many things flooded my mind, which was I thought of like Viktor Frankl, and I think it's Man's Search for Meaning, and in the concentration camps, and how those who fared the best were the ones that could see past the incarceration and have hope. And so that made me think of that and what you're providing for them, along with full expression of themselves and that kind of thing. So that made me think of that. And also, I felt like the word incarceration or came up even before we went there, right? And I like the fact that you're removing the, or they are, you are, however it is, showing the way um, to remove the different bars that quote unquote surround them. But again, you can be not incarcerated and still have incarcerated yourself with others trying to, in an attempt to corral you, to control you, or yourself being like, I need to be this way, and therefore this has to be very rigid, and I have to fall on these lines, or. So even if these children were not incarcerated physically behind bars, we can and do put bars around ourselves that might even be more constricting than physical bars themselves for an entire lifetime when we talk about a life sentence. So, I really, really appreciate you sharing your story and what a service that you provide. So thank you for being you, Tazuo.
be funkified and free.
Yes, yes. So let's do this. Did you get it?
Yeah, it's called Write It Now.
Okay.
They said you got time to serve, but no one told you you got time to amend. That clock never owned you. That gavel ain't the end. Let your tone be known, bend through silence like chisel through stone. This sentence they gave you, it ain't the only kind. You got other senses stored in your divine mind. So listen, they give you a sentence made of bars, but you can write a passage into freedom that reaches beyond the stars. You are not only rhyme lines, you write lifelines, blueprints of the freed mind. They handed you time like a curse, but your pen and your words can flip that verse. You're not confined. You can compose, you can define, but what you know, your story from the head lines. You struggle in your true sight lines. See, this ain't a cell. This is cellular. It's a page with fine lyrical lines. Each breath is a beat. Each thought expressed redesigns. You've been doing time, but now you got time to do you. Remake you. Flip the power of the light switch. Write it raw, write it true. Scratch your truth into the page. Speak your name in the bright glowing flame. Let every sentence you write rebuild your name, who you are. Let the story speak from your scars, because words don't lie. They, they don't fold. And your truth don't shrink. Let it be told who you truly are. They gave you a sentence, but you have the power to write your own sentences, full of your own residences. You write your overwrites, and you write through midnight. You write like stars leak words of light. You write like freedom is coming of age, because real walls ain't built of brick. They're built of doubt and shame. And your words know how to fix it all and make it all work out. But you're rewriting your own script. You write your own worth. Your pen ain't for escape, it's rebirth. Every page is where you take stance. Every line a second chance. You write like thunder's melodies. You etch like composed galaxies. From addiction to resurrection, you rewire time with images that redesign your current situation into lights that shimmer and they shine. You were sentenced. Yeah. but you blow it all apart by writing your own sentence from your heart. Define your future, rearrange fate like a poetic suture, heal all wounds and open heaven's gate. You think this is punishment? Nah, it's just ignition. Where you found rhythm in your own resolution, vision in your own conviction, you called it a cage. No, it's just time where you right the wrongs upon your own world stage. And they called it the end. No, it's just coming of age. Don't wait for a key. You're the tool. You are the number. And you are the author by a be your own school. The system forgot how stories they break stone and how a single sharp word can rebuild any broken bones. So write, not just the past today, write to bend the steel, write to carve your way, write like every bar you spit melts the bars that have a grip on your inside freedom. Write like every poem you drop is the future you ain't met yet. Write like you are here not to vanish, you are here to be seen, to turn those concrete dreams into freedom routines. So speak it with me. My word is real, my voice is fire. This pen don't beg, it builds, it inspires. So remember, you got the light to remain silent, but silent ain't peace. So write it down, write till the sentence release, till the cage becomes the classroom, till the page becomes the pass-through, till the wounds become your words and your words become truth. They gave you a sentence, but you can give them your true story. You write to let freedom ring, truth rising in everything, not for the world, but from within. Write as though you are water, fire, and wind, because no cellular can stop you. What's already lit. You're writing it. You're writing your exit. So just don't wait. Write. Just don't dream. Ignite. Just don't serve. Speak and save yourself. Let your sentences rewrite, because that's the sentence they gave you.
That is beautiful. Oh my gosh. That's probably one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard.
Thank you. Thank you, Cassie.
Yeah, that is beautiful. And I think that I think that everyone has at one point, I'm just speculating when I say that, but I know I felt incarcerated and I've never been incarcerated. And I know that I felt the push to be something different that I'm not, and the push to conform and the push to just fall in line. And I've rebelled in my own way, and when I haven't rebelled, I've felt the suffering of the incarceration that I thought that I was supposed to be under the influence of. And so I felt all of it. And whether it's, been, I think every single one of the things that you shared, it can apply to every single person that I can think of. Um, because I think there's actual bars and then there's the feeling of bars and being forced to be something that you're not, or shunned for being something you're not, or uh, having to hide something that you are in fear of this or that, or in the wanting to be loved or accepted or understood, um, and validated. So, thank you for that. Thank you. That was fire. Or as you said, water, wind, and fire. It's beautiful. That's
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. I feel like I want to listen to that. Some people listen to like The Strangest Secret in the morning or something else. I feel like I want to listen to that in the morning. Or every time I have my journal in front of me and I'm like, I'd just be like, all right, I'm writing. Wow.
Well, I brought more poems if we have times.
Absolutely. Do you have your little buddy there that you were talking about?
I could go get them in a little while.
Sure, sure. Can we
But what you were talking about is actually what brought us together, right? Because Joseph uh, put that comment about the shame and condemnation, right?
Yes.
Right. So those are the bars. Those are the incarcerated, right? Even
Yes.
just self negative talk and not forgiving ourselves, and, right?
Right.
Not loving ourselves unconditionally.
Yes. Yes. We can do that to ourselves with, like you said, self-talk, all that. And I was doing that, a lot of that for my whole life until very recently. Um, After I caught myself, thanks to Eckhart Tolle, and then more so with Joseph bringing that more into my awareness, realizing how I was talking to myself and uh, about myself or about others or about situations or something to do with the past, something to do with the future, or even this now moment, um, skewing it with that. So, yeah, very, very, very,
So,
yes.
so I have this concept that see, going back to the epic story verse experience of Matsu, and I call it the epic story verse experience because it is all my art. Right? Like I'm pretty much a multidiscipline artist. So I animate, I make films, I do puppetry, I do the poetry you just saw, I paint, I draw. And when I worked at Lucasfilm, I was a character and creature designer, right? So I create characters like Yoda and stuff like that. So there's a concept I came across in the epic story, the storyverse, the actual story of Matsu, and it's called each of my characters. When Ra comes out, you'll see he has like almost like a jewel or something like where his like third eye or his
Right?
imagination portal is, right?
Mhm.
And I would draw it on there a lot of times for aesthetic, but then my background of creating characters was like, why is it on there? Like, why does, and some of them wouldn't have it. Like some of them just aesthetically, when I draw them, they wouldn't have it. And I'd be like, well, how come that one doesn't have one? And so that's why I also call it an epic storyverse experience because I write it in the form of like the Iliad and the Odyssey. So it's poems. So I don't have to sit down and write a novel. I write poems and poems and poems and poems, and all these poems. I'm like, whoa, this one's related to that one, and it builds this whole storyverse like Lord of the Rings and Star Wars. And so I started trying to figure out like what was that thing on their head. I mean, I'd make it like a jewel or a stone and it glow, like a ruby or a gemstone, and I'd be like, what is that? And so one day I wrote a poem, and the poem informed me. It said, this is a story stone. I'm like, what good is the story stone? And this goes back to my grandmother. I'm like, what is the story stone? And then why does these characters have them and these other ones don't? And then the poem told me, well, the other ones have it. It's just buried, like you were saying, right? It's buried, like they're not conscious of it, so it's not doesn't show. And I go, what does it do? And then I got deeper into it, and basically what it does is everyone has the story stone that projects their painted poetic symphony. So that's their divine reality, what they came here to do. And then I'm like, well, how's it do that? And then basically said, the poem told me inside of it has a poetic compass. Everyone has their own personal GPS that speaks to them in intuition and creativity and expression, right? So I'm like, well, is it only the artists who have a story? So no, everyone does. Everyone's a divine artist of their own life. And then I was like, well, then how does that poetic compass work? And then that's where got into all this social media, right? Where everyone's like, look at the algorithm. And me as a poet, I looked at the word algorithm. I'm like, what if you spell it alga with an I in it, put the I back into it, and then it's rhythm. I'm a musician, right? It's algorithm. And so I
Okay.
was like, whoa. And then I was like, whoa, maybe then I wrote another poem about that, and it told me about inside the story stone. That's the mechanisms, because the story stone inside a creature, us as creatures, it can't be steel and metal and all these, it's got to be something organic. So I was like, whoa, aquatic algorithm. So that's where a lot of what Joseph has enlightened me to, right? The flow. Like the flow is what makes that poetic compass do its thing. And I'm like, well, then what happens to those creatures that don't know it's there? Like, I'm talking about, we're all water creatures. A lot of the creatures in my story are water creatures because we're water creatures, right? On this planet, right? And the creatures of the planet, right? Underneath us, right? And so um, I started asking my poems that, and I just started writing these poems. And then it brought up a poem, one of the only poems I know from my grandmother, because she was an oral poet. She didn't write. And she also went through the internment camps. So after the internment camps, she stopped speaking English. And yeah, I don't know Japanese, right? Because my parents took Japanese. And so she would chant these poems. And when she's getting into her 90s, that's when I started reconnecting that she was a poet. So I would go with my mother to visit her. Either she was in the elder care home. And the only way we connected is I would tell my mother, tell her to do a poem. So my mother would talk in Japanese to her, and she would do a poem. But she does what is an ancient form of Japanese poetry called shigen, and give you a little sample of it. It's like Kongo ni no. You know what I mean? It's like really going, like pulling it out, whatever it is. And she kept doing this poem, and then I eventually found out she is original poet. Like original poets are not freestylers or improvers. The original poem wasn't written; they just speak it, and that's when I started learning. I have that gift too. I don't have to write them. A lot of times I can just speak them. Right? You still got to create that sacred space because poetry is somewhat dangerous on a level, right? Because you start combining language in a way that can throw a lot of people off. But she did this poem and she kept on saying Kongo Seiki. And she would go, Kongo Seiki. And like, I was like, what is that? Like, came back several times. I'm like, my mother, like, what is that in Japanese? What is Kongo Seiki? And she's like, I don't know. I'm like, we got to figure that out. Like, what is she saying? And so we found a translator, and this translator was really good at going through ancient Japanese because, like, it didn't exist. That's why my mom didn't know it. It didn't exist in normal day Japanese. And so we went through all these books, and basically what the lady came back with the translator was just all these fragments of language. Like it didn't mean anything. She said things like, the work doesn't get done unless the water wheel turns. Right. And that's the flow, right? Like, whoa, wait a minute. Like saying something is more like philosophy or something. And then the biggest thing she came back, she's saying something about we all have a goldenness behind our heart. And when we interact with other people in the outside world, it gets tarnished. And so we have to go within to shine it. And so, see, this is where it connects to the story stone. Like, I was like, shine it? Then how do you shine it? Is there anything else in the poem that shows you how to shine it? And then what I did is I started taking those fragments and writing poems with them. And then the information started flowing from there. And the main information told me that's what my grandma's doing. In Japanese, it's obachan, right? That's what obachan's doing. When she does the Kongo and all that, she's shining her Kongo Seiki, her goldness, which in this Epic StoryVerse experience became the story stone. And so my whole clarity with why I do the poems I just did for you is I facilitate and I transmit, right? I transmit more than making passive content. I transmit through puppetry, poetry, song, music, paintings, comics, animation. I facilitate the opportunity to untarnish that story stone. And we live in a time where sound and light, color, motion, and story has been used, quote unquote, kind of in an evil way to manipulate, to be a flow inhibitor, right? Advertising, a lot of the entertainment is very shock-based, horror-based. war, killing, sickness, zombies. And so that's basically a basis of what I really am. And being funkified is that's what my, definite chief aim on this planet is to, you know, uh, make spiritually potent entertainment in all the fun ways we remember, Winnie the Pooh, Peter Pan, Wizard of Oz, and work in all that tradition. Dr. Seuss, Shel Silverstein, Jim Henson, Morris Sendak, and Where the Wild Things Are, all those incredible tales that have,
Well,
Alice in Wonderland, all the things that have been left behind. And I believe I'm taking the baton. I'm in that lineage. And it has a lot to do with like how we came together, the flow and healing ourselves and remembering that we are love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, prosperity, right?
yes.
Remembrance, right? Something we already got.
Yes. What an incredible story. And so thank you for sharing and honor like the whole thing, your mom, your grandmother, you, how this came to you and sharing the type of expression that she was giving. Um, I felt like it was more about the energy behind the words, just as in, or this, the energy behind the words, along with the sounds of the words or even the meaning, were all being, they were being imbued with energy, I would say. Um, so thank you for that. And I wanted to share something kind of cool. Did you know that when your grandmother was pregnant and she carried your mom, a woman is born with all of the eggs that she will ever have. So while your mom was in your grandmother's womb, the egg that became you, used to become you, was actually in your grandmother as well. And then your
Wow.
mom had you. Kind of cool, huh?
Way cool.
Yeah, yeah. So I was like, he had a lot of exposure energetically, vibrationally, and existing in her as a unit, as a person. So super, super cool to think about that. Um, and you said, I do not do passive. I'm like, even if you did, it wouldn't and couldn't be passive. It's just impossible. I don't see that. So that is great. So you the story verse, right? Is this I don't know a lot about these things, but is it like is it little videos you're doing? Are they mangas that you're drawing? Is it like scripts or something that you're doing or short things that you're doing? Like what is that?
Um, well, it kind of goes back to when I worked at Lucasfilm. I got the incredible opportunity because of my background of being a street kid, a street artist. But at the time, I started working with, like how I work with incarcerated youth right now. I started working with children and the children in adults for art and
Okay.
all areas of art. And that's why I got hired at Lucasfilm and I actually got to work personally with George Lucas. So I didn't work like in the entertainment industry side of it. I got to work on, and he had a question that he was asking himself that he wanted answered. He's like, how come in America, even in America alone, there's not one of me graduating every year from every high school? Not necessarily a filmmaker that was going to make Star Wars, but someone who, you know, had the light and wanted to do something that made impact like Star Wars did. And so that's why he hired me, because I had the best of both worlds. I had come from a very, kind of a street thuggish, lifestyle. And then I had started to study the traditional arts, and then I married them in bringing it to facilitating people to express themselves. So one of the concepts he brought me there was called multi-platform storytelling. And this was 90s, in the 90s, right? So it was right before the evolution of what we're doing now, all these tablets and Zoom and all these interactive mediums, right? And so, growing up, took me like almost 7 high schools to graduate. I barely went to college. There's big story behind that, but I made it through college and I got several degrees, but I still didn't find myself. I was still like you said, incarcerated. I was still socially like, this is, kind of trying to cause trouble in a more productive way. And so your question was, so does Matsu, the Epic StoryVerse experience it comes in everything, because we live in a time right now, there's no gatekeepers. There's no record execs. There's no TV station. Like we're broadcasting the Catalyst show right now. And Joseph, he went directly to my heart, your heart,
Yes.
just directly. And so Matsu is TV series, web series, short films, feature films, formats of live action, puppetry, animation. And so like I said, it's web shorts, right? It's ready for this metaverse experience or whatever that's going to be. But and I love fashion, I love hip hop, right? And I love colors, like obviously you do, right? Right. And so it's clothing, it's apparel. Like I have a line that's called poetry wear, where you take verses, instead of just and then everyone loves creatures and cartoons.
Yes, yes, yes.
And a lot of people remember that more than their traumas. Mickey Mouse, look at Mickey Mouse. Like Mickey Mouse to me communicates happiness. So you'll see a dad wearing a Mickey Mouse shirt, not even into Disney, but he's wearing a Mickey Mouse shirt, or Bart Simpson. And so it's every form of communication. And then you'll hear me talk a lot about, like I already have, like Dr. Seuss, and, it's carrying on the tradition, Shel Silverstein, and Jim Henson, all those great creators. There's one in my heritage, which is, his name is Shigeru Mizuki, and he basically is the grandfather of manga. And so it's in comic books. Like I could go get that too. I have a book called Symphony that I put out about 5 years ago. And it's 90 pages of my sketches, my paintings, my poems, my stories. And it has over probably like 3,000 characters and creatures in it. Okay. And some of them I tell stories about. And that's my newest campaign right now is Symphony 2. So I'm really working in the metaphor of symphony. So this is Symphony 2. So the first one was like a allegro, right? The beginning movement. Okay. Right? So it kind of introduced the world, the Epic StoryVerse world of Matsu. It has a short graphic novella in the back, so a graphic novel. So it tells one of the first stories. And then this new one I'm doing a crowdsourced funding for right now. It's called Sight from the Story Stone. So it's all about unveiling the part of the story I've been telling you about, the story stone, how this story can help you undull those senses, in your poetic compass inside your GPS, undull the senses, because those senses have got dulled. Like we live in 3 worlds. We live in a triad, right? We live in the physical world, right? That's where we eat, right? And we walk, right? And we breathe and we build in this world, right? But then there's the other world, the second world, which, is the imagination of the dreamscape. And that's where creation happens, right? That's the pre-form, that's the thinking from, right? That's the pre-form world. That's the world where creation happens, innovation happens, and healing, right? Like you can heal yourself before form arises through your imagination, right? And then there's the third world, right? Which is vibration. And that's the mythic dimension too. That's also where the story stone lives, right? Where language connects. And in that world, right, is vibration, right?
Mhm.
intuition. That's where our intuition comes from, right? And that's where our emotion comes from. Like Joseph talks a lot about the emotion, right? And so the third world connects the imagination and dreamscape to our physical reality, right? And so the senses, to me, are the creative resilience, your own artist inside yourself. That you don't got to paint, you don't got to draw, right? You don't have to understand light and analyze it for it to enlighten you, right? You don't have to understand a poem and language and sound and music, right? If it's remaking you, allowing you to remake yourself, like giving you a portal, giving you what I call, the story stone, projecting your painted poetic symphony, your unique, original, extraordinary, who you already are, who you always been. And so, yeah, it's in all different forms.
So if someone wanted to access those things, is it a website? Is it uh,
Well, it's social media. It's if you go to
okay,
my YouTube channel, I talk like this all about it.
okay,
I make speed paints, so
okay,
I show you me painting them.
okay.
I'm gonna start publishing animations with a lot of these poems on them,
Oh,
right? And its ultimate aim is, you're gonna go to the movie theater. And you
okay.
can buy toys, you can buy plushies and clothes, and I mean it's every medium that has ever inspired all of us. Like why is music so? And it's music. I write songs. I work in folk music, funk. I rap, hip hop. So
Sure.
it's going to be just every medium possible. So right now it's my YouTube channel. If you go to my Instagram and my TikTok, you can see a lot of the paintings and drawings. You know,
Okay.
and I want to get more into, that's why I'm also networking in this community to meet folks like you. I'm looking for, you know, to flow with people who already know this, and, it's ready to, like I said, I'm a river poet, and the river always goes into the mainstream.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
But
Perfect.
the best way to support right now is I'm doing a crowdsource funding for Symphony 2. So I have, it's a crowdsource, so it has all different levels. And I'm offering like, at the $35 level, you could just get a book. So you'll help me produce the book, and and I'm only going to make 500 of them full glossy. I'll get the Symphony 1 so you can see what it looks like. The
Yeah.
second, and then it goes up to tiers, right? And the tiers go up to, I'll do a personal watercolor painting for you,
Oh.
right? I'll do an acrylic painting all the way up to the high levels where I'm asking you to come along and co-produce. And I'm going to create a character for you,
Oh, wow.
right?
That
That
sounds fun.
integrates into the Matsu StoryVerse experience. And so you basically become a part of the production, business team, whatever it is you do. Like that's why I love Joseph so much. It's like whatever you love to do, because I love doing this. And
Right.
so, I'm done. Like I need to hire you, and I need to like, I just want to flow and have fun. I mean,
Sure.
it's taken us all back to our childhoods. So it's a fun way of healing. Like I say, I make uh, entertainment that uplifts and inspires instead of escapes,
Yeah.
that awakens you instead of distracts you, and
Uh,
heals you instead of hides. And that's what it's all about. So that's why I call it experience. So it is tangible art you can get. And I am an artist, and that is my brand. But like I said, it's not passive content, it's here to interact.
Perfect. I would love for you to go get the book and your little
Okay.
creature, and I'll
Okay.
just,
How about you
yeah,
talk? Yeah, you talk to people right now.
I will talk. All right. So, uh, I just want to say, what a ride, and how fascinating. There's a lot of passion in there for sure for what he's doing and creating, and the excitement that he gets from drawing from the past, which could have dimmed his light, but ended up polishing his heart, like his grandmother spoke of, so that he's able to heal and shine his best light forward and therefore be available and inspiring to those who can see him and understand him and be where, say, he's been and see where he is now and follow that. Um, and I like how he said that those were the great ones, like those were the great ones. And what came to mind to me is um, when he had described what um, the highest risk youth or the ones that were the top tier ones. The first thing that came to mind to me was those were the ones who were trying to escape the most, that which was around them. And culturally or societally, it may not have been met for approval or correct or whatever. But that was something in them that was looking to escape, almost like a because there was different bars around them, I would say, for them to act out in that way or in the environment that they were in. They didn't know how to truly take that energy that was them, that was so unique, and channel it in a way that led them off into a different direction. So I thought that that was beautiful that he saw them as like the way, because they actually went so far in being themselves that they broke societal norms. And I feel like you can break societal norms without being so drastic, sometimes tiny little steps, like this step, this step, this step, this step, in finding your way. And but I do feel like when you do step out of what society or other people expect of you and you do your own thing, um, that you are a the way. So, all right. So what do we got?
So here's Symphony One.
Ooh, look at that. It's beautiful. Wow. I see what you're doing. So symphony like an orchestra,
Yeah.
everything's big. Okay.
But more the metaphor of our lives. Like we live symphonically. We don't live just rock and roll. We live symphonically,
Okay.
right? Every instrument, and then so there's
Oh
like
my gosh, that's
they,
gorgeous.
so there's stories and all my paintings and sketches, and illustrations.
I love that.
Yeah,
Oh, there was an owl there.
yeah. There's the all different types because basically I specialize. You ever heard of yokai?
No.
Yokai are fairy creatures of Japan.
Oh,
So
wow.
just like in Lord of the Ring, there's elves and gnomes and
Yeah.
right hobbits, right? Yeah. In Japan, they're yokai, and yokai in English roughly means strange spirit.
Well, I've had an owl fall. I walk at night and I've had an owl, actually two different ones in two different locations, actually three different locations, three different owls kind of following me around while I'm walking. It actually fly. I could almost touch them. Wow. Lately. Wow.
Yeah, and so yokai, if you look them up on the internet, right? Yokai are ancient, from Japan. They're in folklore stories, right? But most of the world has interpreted them as horror, as demons and ghosts and stuff. So Matsu is a whole rebirth of it because there is the other side. They are also deity and light beings and
Oh,
God, just
okay.
like the owl.
Okay.
That's why basically what you saw was a Fukuro yokai,
What does that
which
mean?
are owl.
Oh,
That's an owl. Yeah,
Fukuda yokai.
Fukuro.
Fukudo yokai.
Yeah.
Wow, these are beautiful. Oh, this is so great. Oh, I'm so proud of you.
Yes. So I'm working on Symphony 2 because
Okay.
these pretty much there's 500 of these all over the world, and there's no more real physical copies available. And
Aw.
so the campaign is Symphony 2 to make Sight from the Story Stone.
Okay.
And this one, the first one, I crowdsource funded.
Okay.
And one interesting fact about it is I didn't really know what I was doing because I was raising money to do, my my artist name online is I Paint Creatures. I also go by IPC,
Okay.
right? That's what it says. I Paint Creatures up here,
Okay.
right? And that's my YouTube channel. That's my Instagram. That's my TikTok. I Paint Creatures, right? That's pretty much my brand as an artist.
Okay.
And and I crowdsourced this, and I originally was crowdsourcing to make an animated film, and my supporters started funding it, and I was like, that's not enough. I'm gonna have to make 3 times as much. And they're like, well, how about you just start with a book? And I was like, a book? Because I have this whole story, in my head, like ready to show you films,
Right.
and I have the skills to do that, to animate and stuff, right?
Sure.
And so I was like, a book? I can't make a book. I'm like, what am I gonna make a book about? And they're like, all this stuff you've been showing us, all those paintings you're doing, just throw them in all those stories you tell online. Like,
Oh,
throw them in a book. So I threw it in a book, and I really didn't know what I was doing because, like
it's
I love,
gorgeous.
like you were saying, what medium is. I love telling stories. I love doing poems. I love doing little sketches. I love doing paintings. And so they're like, throw it all in there. And so I just threw it all in there. And so Symphony 2 is really special to me because now I really know what I'm doing, like what
Ah,
kind of book I'm making,
awesome.
like, like,
Awesome.
because this book, like I've had book collectors buy this book, and they're like, I have a whole library at home, and I don't know where to put your book. So I made a special little table that has your book on it because it doesn't fit in the category of like a poetry book or an
Right.
art book or a story book, So, but Symphony 2, I really have a good handle of like, and it's going to introduce the story stone and
Yes.
all these and then go deeper into like the different types of yokai, like the Fukuro, and then there's the kappa. The kappa yokai are basically there's sushi rolls named after yokai, like kappa roll.
Oh,
The cucumber sauce sushi roll is a kappa yokai.
okay.
Yeah, and so a kappa is a water goblin. Like, see if I can show you. Yeah, right there is a kappa.
Ah, look at that. Wow, it's so beautiful. Good for you.
So that's that's symphony.
Nice. Thank you. I love that.
Thank
So
you.
many possibilities. All right, where's your creature?
Like Joseph said, when he commented on my introduction, he's like, so many things to flow with.
Yes,
I
yes.
was like, yeah.
I like that. I like that.
But Catherine, Catherine, I heard that Catherine, you are funkified. Is that correct, Catherine?
It's official.
Yeah, we another funkified. Catherine, are you yokai?
Am I a yokai? And was that an owl? I can't remember what a
Yeah, you a Fakuro? Oh, she's not only a yokai, she knows she's a Fakuro. Hey, IPC,
and
you got me on this stream thing again. What are we doing? Well, you gotta tell them, just tell them like what you always tell everyone. All right, you see my story stone?
I love it.
See my story stone? That's where I get my poetic compass all aligned. And the aquatic algorithm is because I am what is known as a tatsu. You know what a tatsu is, Catherine?
No.
A tatsu is a Japanese water dragon. I'm a water dragon.
Woohoo! Hey, can you see my story
Whoa! You even know your story stone on PC. What are we gonna do about that? So
stone?
you know you're funky, right?
Yes.
You got your funk unstuck. You're in the flow now. You got your funk unstuck. Now you are planetary, funkified UBAB. You know what a UBAB is, Catherine?
I do not know what a UBAB is.
You're a UBAB. Say
What is
you're a
it?
UBAB. I'm a UBAB. Say I'm a UBAB.
I'm a UBAB.
UBAB stands for Ultimate Badass Being.
Yes, I am a UBAB, an ultimate
Yeah.
badass being.
So IPC told me you learning about the Epic StoryVerse experience of Matsu. Oh,
Woohoo! Yes, yes. I'm having fun with it. I'm having fun with it. And you are too?
you know what Matsu means?
No.
It's an acronym. Matsu is spelled Matsu. It stands for Making Art Together, Supporting Universal Unity.
I like that.
And I'm a part of the story.
I love
I'm
that
a
too.
part of the story called The Funky Eye Puppets. I'm one of the Funky Eye Puppets, Catherine. I'm so excited. I get all pumped up, because I'm funky and free. Funky meaning I be exactly who I be, and I flow. You like my flow? I flow.
I love the flow. Yay. I love
Thank you for having me on here, Catherine. Thank you
it.
very much.
It's been
And you
awesome.
definitely are a you bad funkified and free.
Woo! Oh, that was awesome. I felt like a little kid. I did.
Yeah.
Like when I used to holler at the TV when like the little puppets were on there and they'd be like, "How are you today?" or something. I'd be like, "I'm great." Fantastic. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you for your delight.
Yes, yes. Awesome. Awesome. That's great. I don't think I'll ever forget that. And I don't think I've had the opportunity to in real time actually interact. So this was like a child thing because at one point I woke up and realized that it was just a TV. So thank you.
So I hope that answered your question because that's basically my definite chief aim is uh the Funky Eye Puppets and Raw are the next Muppets. There is no next Muppets.
I love that.
It's time to bring it to the world, and so that's a lot of my entrepreneur now is definitely putting it out there. I'm ready to make the whole troupe of the Funky Eye Puppets. There's all kinds of them. There's Fakuro, and
Okay.
and and I'm offering people to come along and flow with me and create this amazing thing and make an entertainment space where we all can, you know, learn to be ourselves again.
I love that. You know what I pictured doing for a second is do you know when you're putting up a video to YouTube and it says, "Is this made for kids?" Like, yes. You
It's
know that
made for all the kids though, so I say
yes.
no because
For
it's
all the
for
kids.
all the
Okay.
kids and all the adults, right?
Whenever I do a YouTube search, I'm just gonna look when I go into YouTube just for the heck of it. I'm always fascinated. Let's see, so YouTube, right? And like when I go in to put like a search, it's always little kid stuff that comes up. Little things for kids. Like the top one, it's not Dora, but it's like Camilla or Chameleon or something like that. And then there's another one below that for kids. So kids shows are up there without even having to put in a letter. It's kind of
Yeah,
interesting.
because you even think about it these days, like even you said, right? All the parents grew up on all this stuff,
Right,
right?
right.
All the parents, have their kids going to the school with their Metallica shirt, you know? Like the kids don't even know. I'll go, you know Metallica? No, my dad got it for me, you
Right,
know? And so
right.
that's what Matsu is designed for is the universal audience, everybody.
I love
It's
that.
a time I think we need to celebrate ourselves,
Yes,
you know? Because
yes.
the entertainment, like the base definition of entertainment is to create a safe space for you to activate your wonder and your imagination.
Mm.
That's why you said when you saw you went back there seeing the puppet on the TV, like it gave you a safe space to be
Yes,
Catherine,
yes.
wild and wonderful and not inhibited.
Not at
Right?
all. And I
Yeah.
remind me of the Peter Pan part in the Peter Pan where I think they wanted Tinkerbell. She was weak or something like that. And they're like, clap, clap, and say, I believe, and she will fly. So I'm like, clapping, come on, Tinkerbell.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
believe. And so it kind of remind that interaction with him brought me back to clapping at the TV, like really like clapping and I believe, and waiting for her to fly. And so it brought me back to that. Little Catherine.
It brought your you bad back.
Yeah. So, well, I have enjoyed this interaction immensely. We could do it again.
Okay. Would you like to end on a poem?
I would love to end on a poem, please. And thank you. Tazuo.
Yeah. Not a lot of people get it, so that's
Of
awesome. Thank you.
course.
So, a little story behind this poem. This is one of the characters in the epic storyverse experience of Matsu called Silly Rabbit, and just to also show how it's such an interactive story, right? It includes all of you or those that flow into my life and flow and start to create in it, even in just enjoying it. I was streaming on the internet, and one night a guy came in and he started donating money like ridiculously, like 150, 300, 400, 500, like, just, and I was sitting there doing my art and telling stories. And at one point I kind of paused and I said, hello, who are you? Like,
Right?
I appreciate the flow and the money, but like, what is going on here? And he started messaging me in the back channel, and he said, well, uh, if you want me to be honest. I said, yeah, I want you to be honest. He's like, uh, this is the fifth time I've been diagnosed with terminal cancer. So I'm dying real here soon. And I come from a pretty wealthy family in Richmond, Virginia. And I, pardon the language, but I fucking hate my family. But they gave me this inheritance. And they want me to do all these things with it, but I'm dying of cancer. And I just stumbled across you, watched you for a little while, and what you're doing here, you need to keep doing. So I started giving you the money. And so I was like, whoa. So I created kind of a relationship with this guy, and I never met him physically, communicated him over, and his name was Silly Rabbit. His screen name was Silly Rabbit.
Silly
And
Rabbit trickster for kids.
yeah, yeah. And so it was like, uh, and it was constantly tragic talking to him. Like, he'd message me, I got his cell phone, and we talk on the cell phone and text messages, and it would be, I'm back in the hospital again. It'd be all these tragic stories. And then he would also tell me stories that didn't make no sense to me. He's like, I'm so in love with this woman. I'm like, I thought you were dying. He's like, she broke my heart, man. And he was going through all that. And so at one point, I didn't know what else to do. So I started these series of poems called the Leap Chronicles, where I'm talking to Silly Rabbit as I paint creatures. And then eventually he passed, and I continued to do them. And so he's become a true yokai, a spirit guide. And now I haven't got the opportunity yet to make Silly Rabbit puppet, but he's one of the funky eye puppets. And so this is one of the poems of Leap Chronicles, and it's called Teacups and Trampolines. Silly Rabbit told me once, you got to keep going until you make it to the top. You can't stop that music weave the bebop as it hip hops, leaving a spinning sunflower trace that fits perfectly in the shape of a papaya sun. That tune that follows all the way to the bottom with rhythm that is unique because it peaks, then it flatlines. And it has the signature of your own time, like the dark side of the moon. A balloon that was let go into the lagoon on Main Street and soared above the midnight heat into the stratosphere, where no one could hear the tree fall in the forest because I got no rest at all on this musical staff. Working all night until the last shift of the rocket ship that Rabbit told me, hey, IPC, I quit. I'm out of here before the secondhand nurse clock could appear into the giant teardrop hanging from the sky. Then Silly Rabbit reminded me that poems are all about reminding yourself it's a slow ride, a pause in between the avalanche ocean tide, and drift in between the saxophone stars, grab a lift on a helium guitar, make a riff etched to parachute scars into the popular ears of a million childhood mirrors that reflect a leaping limousine out in between the silence and your own song, where it's felt that you maybe couldn't belong, but you were a lasting legacy, a memory what one soul could leave behind like the warmth of yesterday's sunshine on a shoulder crater, a syllable alligator snapping in the tunnels of the burrows where Rabbit said, only tomorrow you will appreciate today. Like when he used to say, hey, IPC, with a southern grin, that needles drop within, paint the day away, take all the sorrows of yesterday and string them together like telephone cans. Elastic romantic spin art silver sands, dunes into lasting cascades, because all the stillness is just a laughing parade, front to end, elastic rubber river bands that ebb and flow, leaving a caramel-coated flow from an algorithm designed and humming, a concerto made of kind carousel cosmos switched into radio rhythms and patchwork limits. And this is where Silly Rabbit sat on the free throw line, said it's always all about the good times. One remembers when all said is in decline and sitting there upbeat on crow's feet. Then he would dangle off a cobweb cleaner. He would say, spin a spider solar satellite head steamer until it dials into a meter pulse, a reverse engineering its course into a ballad that makes you feel natural with a semicircle looped into a bucket barrel. Take the stripes off a tape roller and make the snows fall solar. As Silly Rabbit always said, even though it appears it's falling into the sound, it's just tectonic plates going around and around and around. And in that day, all just appeared to sit still. It was a hummingbird on an ant's hill, where the marble machine mixed the medicine into hobo copper scenes, edited it all back into 3-point scenes, into a B-roll, into a supersonic, supernatural. Because when Silly Rabbit called me with an emergency, everybody, including flashing maroon lights, picked up its fall from the bottom to the top, where he would just say, hey, IPC, take a painted poetic symphony, keep inking it till it's full of mystery, broadcast it into the unknown, cellular patterns, circular telephones. Then the dense religious fog will hear the oration of the jubilee cogs, groove knots together with iridescent remembrance of a rabbit's foot that spiraled into the noon and went kapoof. And he yelled from the top of the roof, hey, IPC, take that Zeppelin spray can paint. I am on every helicopter blade. Keep it spinning like an arcade whoosh. As Silly Rabbit would say, push the pocket cul-de-sac. Let's play hacky sack. Let's go way back on the Twitter, put a Tesla on the X. And on every rhinoceros' neck before he speared into the Terror Dome, as the last thing I remember before Aldous played piano under the cyclone was how Rabbit would spin a teacup into a trampoline, throw and ask, hey, IPC, can you pick up the rib cage bone, tune it to the key of a hexagon, and sing a radio sad song, a galactic Geronimo King Kong swinging Captain Hook before the bridge into the symphony would collapse? And then Silly Rabbit, he killed it softly. He strummed the last chords of his voice silent, leaving a tattooed remedy on the tips of eye pain creature's sword brush, with a flappy ear signature touch, as you would hear echoes all the way until the sun set. He was just a punk rocker MC that you will never, ever forget.
Wow. Huh? There was so much in there. There was so much in there. I loved it. Talk about weaving. You wove some stuff in there, mister. Definitely, definitely. And
Silly Rabbit did it.
yeah,
Silly Rabbit did it.
okay. And there was a lot of like crescendoing happening there. Like, yeah, beautiful. That was definitely a symphony. It was music everywhere. Beautiful. Thank you to Silly Rabbit and to Tazuko.
Tazuo.
Tazuo. Tazuo. So, thank you. Until next time.
Thank you so much, Catherine.
Are you
Appreciate you.
I appreciate you. Are you complete?
Yes, very much. Great time. Thank you. Tons of fun.
Thank you for being you. Tazuo. Take
We'll
care.
be in touch.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.